Hello and welcome to Money Life. This is Sucheta Dalal. We are going to revisit infrastructure leasing and financial services. Yes, that massive 347 company conglomerate which went up in smoke in September 2018. In fact, it's going to be nearly 2 years since that blew up. And as most of you would recollect, the government sacked the board in September, announced that there's a new board headed by a dynamic banker, Uday Kotak, but he has to work with a bunch of retired bureaucrats who are going to be calling the shots on what is happening. Everybody agrees that the progress has been shockingly slow and nothing much is happening. A few cases were filed in the beginning, in the big rush after 2018. SFIO filed a case, asked some tough questions. There was one forensic audit by Grant Thornton, who was appointed by this new board. But over the last 2 years, nothing much has happened. So why are we revisiting ILFS this week? Well, quite simple. There are two publications, Money Control and Indian Express, who seem to have got hold of the second forensic audit report of Infrastructure, Leasing and Financial Services, ILFS Transportation Network Limited. We're going to call it ITNL. ITNL and IFIN, where there was the first forensic audit report, are the two big holding companies in this massive structure that is ILFS. Both of them were listed and they have multiple layers of hundreds of companies below them. ITNL was another big sinking ship when ILFS went up in smoke, the holding company. So now there is a forensic audit report which essentially shows more in detail what was disclosed by the IFIN report. Now, those of you who've been watching this blog regularly would have seen our detailed report on IFIN and the 10 categories of fraud that were committed. So the new report is more details. Those who are in the financial sector and following it up or need money from ILFS, have to recover, are going to pour over those details with much glee. Some of it is in the public domain. You can go and look it up on the Money Control website or Indian Express. As far as we are concerned, we're not really looking at the granularity of each and every contract, but overall, essentially, it just proves once more, underlines the utter dubiousness of the business dealings of this big conglomerate, the lawlessness, the collusion with auditors and law firms, fixing of deals, giving bids to people who weren't even in the business, whose finances were very shady and shaky, who would not have been entitled to loans by other banks, in fact have been refused them sometimes, and circular deals where IFIN lent money to ITNL through one of the companies which ultimately were rewarded either with higher interest rate or contracts. So it was circular trading that was going on, and all under the watchful eye of the regulator. Now, this is some of what we are going to discuss today, which is of interest to us. The question that ultimately we ask is, sure, people are misbehaving, they are fraudulent, but where are the regulators? Did they know or did they not know? So some would like to pretend that they didn't know. I think this second forensic audit by Grant Thornton only brings out that there was pure willful blindness. There was enough of evidence. It was known before 2018. In fact, it was known in 2016. And yet the regulators didn't do anything. All my blogs on ILFS, and I have several of them, have shown how there were whistleblowers, there were investors who have raised the red flag, written to the RBI, brought it to the notice of RBI governors. There were partners who were harassed and jailed. They have written long letters to former governors of the Reserve Bank of India. Nothing ever happened. So I'm going to go step by step and look at how key players behaved and what was happening, what this audit further underlines and discloses, to just tell you how after 2 years, not only are the cases flagging, so the Enforcement Directorate is going slow, SFIO has filed something which doesn't seem to be moving. Yes, what you have is 5 senior officials from this cabal that was close to the founder Ravi Parsati are in jail for over a year. They used to head these companies. One was the vice chairman, Hari Shankaran. There was Mr. Ramesh Bawa, who headed IFIN, and there were 3 others. But is that enough? Because nothing moves. There are people who invested in mutual funds and pension funds, which in turn invested in various ILFS companies. There's no sign of them getting money. The other big issue is, what is this resolution? It's cost 100 crores in terms of just fees paid to very expensive lawyers, M&A consultants, the forensic auditors and others. Well over 100 crores. Must be 150 by now. But there is nothing much to show. So you have a couple of announcements. The biggest chunk of what should happen has been in ITNL, because it was one of the large companies in the group and had all those expensive, botched up, messy, litigious projects for building highways across India. Nothing much has moved. Now the excuse, of course, will be the COVID lockdown. In the middle of the lockdown, yes, they did two deals. One which has been dragging on forever, which is the sale of 7 wind power projects to Oryx Corporation. Now remember, this is no big deal because all 7 had Oryx Corporation as a 51% partner. Oryx Corporation itself owns 23% and above in the holding company ILFS. What is important to note is Oryx Corporation, with a director on the board, has been a complete silent, unquestioning witness to all the shenanigans of Mr. Parthasarathy and gang. It's hard to believe they didn't know. So what have they done? They had a contract. They took over the 49% in 7 wind power projects. Big deal. There was a small positive payment. The other big sale is the Gujarat Gift City project. This was a joint venture with the Gujarat government. Gold-plated deal. We've written about it. In fact, if anything, the Gujarat government had been ripped off so badly that one of the independent directors has gone and filed a PIL to try and get the Gujarat government to see how it had been gypped. He was, of course, sacked for his efforts, and the PIL went nowhere in years together. So the Gujarat government has very kindly paid 32 crores. So that is one big event off the hands of this team, which is apparently looking at resolution. Now, the story about ILFS, as you know, is that this conglomerate pretended like it was a government organization because across states it had joint ventures with state government undertakings, and a bunch of IAS officers which used to head them either as chairman, as managing director, in executive or non-executive capacity. The boards were packed with bureaucrats. So when nothing happens in 2 years, it begs the question, are we going slow because we want to protect all those people? And why is it that when you pack the board with bureaucrats, they're able to do 2 deals, literally? What about Rajasthan? What about Noida Toll Bridge? What about the multiple projects in Tamil Nadu with the Tamil Nadu government? Why isn't anything moving? Why are they sitting on those boards of companies? Yes, this new board of director is represented on all those joint ventures as well. Why doesn't anything move? Why doesn't anything move through the courts? And you then have a second forensic audit, which for heaven's sake takes 2 years. It's almost 2 years. And that's when the second forensic audit is out. Meanwhile, take a look at what I have to say about the complicity or duplicity of various people involved. So let's look at what the key players and stakeholders have to say. The auditors are an important player. It's supposed to be an independent audit. It is supposed to give the first warning signals. Rating agencies also depend on what they write. So the Indian Express, which has a copy of the forensic report, says that SRBC and Company, which is an arm of Ernst & Young, was the auditor of ITNL. It appears to have kept out concerns about viability and about it being a going concern after meetings with the management. So in the 2017-18 report, it met officers. It was going to report that there are doubts about whether ITNL is a going concern, but it did not do that. Okay. It was finally published in a quarterly report on 13th August, and this happens conveniently after the founder, Ravi Parthasarathy, has stepped down a little earlier on grounds of ill health. So the chairman gets out, and then this is published in the quarterly audit, but not in the 2017-18 audit. Now, the chairman himself, Mr. Parthasarathy, knew that things were shaky in 2016. He is supposed to have sent an email to the top management, which is most of those guys who have been arrested and some who have not. he's supposed to have said it may not be feasible to sustain ITNL cash flow requirements much longer. And he speaks about talking to the RBI. He also seems to have been advised by a law firm, very conveniently not named because obviously the firm is still allowed to help this new management, being on this side, on that side, was advising Ravi Parsati, now advising the new management. So even with the RBI, he says, well, all the RBI restructuring schemes have been scrapped, so we will talk to somebody. He talks about meeting. And here, this is important. He meets Mr. R. Gandhi, former Deputy Governor of the Reserve Bank of India. And to keep him advised, he doesn't expect much will happen. But guess what he was trying to say? He's saying we are in bad shape, but we have raised money in tough conditions in the past, so we should be given permission with new rules only for us to be able to raise money again. Remember, the RBI had, and I have shown this in my previous blogs, already had a lot of whistleblower letters. And here is the founder chairman going and saying things are looking bad. What did the RBI do? From 2016 to 2018 until it collapsed, nothing. Absolutely nothing. It didn't ask them to cut down the number of companies, shut down what is unviable, clean up their operations. There is no sign of anything. In fact, so much so that the Serious Frauds Investigation Office, for the first time ever, has actually questioned the role of different people in the RBI and said, why did they not do anything? But having asked that question over a year ago, things have gone silent. Everything is in cold storage until this new report has come out. So, which brings us to the regulator, right? So, Mr. Gandhi, remember Mr. Gandhi handled demonetization. He's still a favorite with the government and with the RBI. Post-retirement, he was appointed to the Yes Bank board, apparently to keep an eye on what was going on when it was shaky. This man hasn't done anything about IL&FS for 2 years. And after Yes Bank was bailed out in a public-private deal, Mr. Gandhi is back on the board. I sent a WhatsApp message to him saying, what does this say? But of course, unexpectedly, I don't have a reply. So, like I said, RBI is sitting on whistleblower reports, does nothing. The deputy governor who knew and ought to have really cracked the whip. You look at how they moved with PMC Bank and shut it down and stopped people from withdrawing any money. Why wasn't anything done with IL&FS to tighten the screws? Who's going to ask those questions? And who's being protected and saved when those obvious questions are not being asked? And why is the resolution moving so slowly? Now, another stunner for all of you is what's happening to the employees. So, both reports, the previous one and this one, shows that Mr. Dilip Bhatia was very close to the cabal that was around Ravi Parsati. But this management, the bureaucrats, have decided to promote him to CEO. If it's not enough that he's been promoted, a bunch of people, they decide, including a couple of HR people, an IT person, are going to be rewarded with a sort of bonus. They're quibbling a bit about whether it's a bonus or not, but essentially a bunch of people have been given an incentive. Now, I got a message from somebody on 4th April expressing complete shock that people in IL&FS are being rewarded with bonuses when they ought to be happy just keeping their jobs. And remember, IL&FS always had some of the highest salaries. So these are extremely well-paid people. We're talking about an economic decline over the last 2 years. In fact, ever since demonetization, we have a company which is under huge turmoil. It's shutting down so many units. So sure, they're senior people, but they should be relieved that they are, because it's not like they're the hottest people in the market, having worked very closely with Parsati to get new jobs. But the bureaucrats decided that a bunch of them have to be rewarded. So I brought this to the attention of the chairman, Mr. Uday Kotak, and the RBI, and on 7th April, the payments were frozen. By then, they had already paid out 4.48 crore out of 11 crore that they planned to give as bonuses. And look at who the people are who got them. So one is, of course, Mr. Dilip Bhatia. Then the others are S.C. Mittal, who is the CEO of ITNL, Mr. Wagle, the CFO of ITNL. Now remember, this is significant because just last week, ITNL has declared a huge loss of 17,000 crore. Now, you could say that nothing much is happening, it's under resolution, wouldn't there be a bigger loss? Okay, there's a 17,000 crore loss. There are people who invested in pension funds, people like you and me who are waiting for their money. Are you giving them a bonus in this time? How do you explain the bonus rather than a salary cut? They're not the only ones. There's one Mr. Krishna Kumar of IIML who incidentally has resigned, so even this persuasion didn't work. Then the IT person, Mr. Savio, Manoj Burkar, CFO of IIML. There's one Anil Sharma, CEO of Elsamex. This is again important. Elsamex is a company which has a global footprint. This is the one which had the football investment in Spain, and where people were being ferried to give them a nice time watching European football. Whenever ILFS wanted to gratify people, they have operations in Africa and in the Far East. This is a company that needs a deep forensic audit. There is so much of dirt out there that one hears about. Nothing much is being done. There's no deep forensic audit there. Instead, there is a bonus for the person in charge. Don't ask me why. A couple of others that don't matter. Now, I asked the ILFS spokesperson how do they explain it, and their initial reaction was to say, we have no comments. Then later at 10 in the night, I got a message from them saying that they have something to say on these bonuses. Not much, but I'm going to say it at the end of this video blog. So the point is that the slow progress and resolution that has happened, which all of us are upset about, is not upsetting the government. In fact, the Mr. Injeti Srinivas, the Secretary, Ministry of Corporate Affairs, gave an interview, a long rambling interview to PTI in April, where he thinks that all was well, and he makes this stunning statement that nobody ever knew. How did everyone miss the red flags? Mr. Srinivas, if you have been seeing our blog or reading what we wrote over the last 2 years, even before ILFS collapsed, we started writing at the end of July, you would have known that people were holding red flags in the face of RBI and other regulators and jumping up and down. People had been jailed for asking questions. Directors of investors like Erica had been threatened. They have all written to the RBI. If nobody bothered, if they are still being protected, how on earth can someone in an official position claim that nothing was known? But this is what he says. And everybody from the regulators to the investors, lenders, partners, and the bureaucracy was co-opted. So when people are co-opted, it is like the dog that doesn't bark. So here's a watch, all the watchdogs, all the checks and balances fail to work when everybody is directly or indirectly part of the cabal. So we're spending big money ostensibly to resolve ILFS. We're paying a board of directors. We've given them a post-retirement job. Things are moving at snail's crawl. There'll always be an excuse. This time the excuse is COVID. Now, before I end this, let me read out what the ILFS management has had to say about the bonuses that were handled. To be completely fair to the management, I'm going to read out what they said about why the executives were rewarded. So they say, retention payout under the key resource program included people that were critical to see through the enormous resolution mandate across ILFS group companies. Commitment and performance formed an important basis of this one-time payout, into brackets from operational cost, and was paid on completion of performance and retention period. The list of eligible population was identified across companies for this payout after evaluating relevant aspects. Total payout till date was 4.48 crores. This was not a bonus, hence not linked to company performance. How wonderful. So not linked to company performance, and they are so key to resolution. They were so key to resolution. Why didn't they stop the damn mess in the first place? Now, make up your mind. It's your take. Thank you.